Welcome everyone to the fifth live with Hui Hui and Tean.
Hi everyone.
Hello, good evening.
How come every live show that you do is always at a secret location and different one? You're a secret agent, Hui?
Because everybody is afraid of being politically persecuted by the AGC. So we have different location or appear to be in different location.
Okay, my next question is for Tean because I think this question is designed specially for you. In today's news, the Speaker of Parliament said that MPs should not make false allegations in Parliament. Right? I'm sure you have something to say about that, right?
I do not know on what basis he uttered those statements.
Sorry, not false. MPs should not make unfounded allegations in Parliament.
You know, let me say this. I have been very critical of the conduct of this speaker. All right? And I find him very wanting in his job. And I do not want to repeat what has been said, on so many occasions, whether in social media or otherwise, as to how he performs his job. But I do not take him seriously. All right? And it is a sad reflection of our politics, my friends. When the Speaker of Parliament is not only a member of the PAP, but a CEC member. All right? A CEC member. And the other day, there was a picture of him having lunch with Goh Chok Tong and all his other Marine Parade MPs together. In Britain, once the Speaker is elected, he cuts off all ties with his party. Okay? It is a convention in Britain because every person, including the Speaker, must be a member of Parliament. You know what happens at the election? There will be no opposition opposing him, so he walks in. But once he is elected a Speaker, if let's say he was formerly a Conservative MP, he cuts off all ties with his party. How can it be that in this country, we have a Speaker that is not only a member of the PAP, has lunch with his fellow MPs, and is a member of the CEC of the party? You tell me. Hey, we are not small kids, all right? You talk about impartiality and all that. There is a maxim in the law. Justice must not only be done, but seem to be done. All right? You tell me. You look at this situation and you understand the background. Hey, any small kid will ask Papa, Mama, hey, how can the Speaker be really impartial, right? So I am sorry to that question, which you asked me. It comes in one ear and it goes out the other ear. I don't take seriously what he says. Okay?
Hui, when you get into Parliament, and you always say that the government is sometimes not transparent. For example, you always say, why the government never disclose the breakdown of the workers in the Singaporean PR. They always lump together as residents or locals. Okay? So my question to you is this, Hui. When you enter Parliament, how are you going to deal with this problem of that you should not be opening your mouth to say anything that is unfounded allegations?
First thing, the government should the people inside the Parliament should actually ask the government for breakdowns on how many jobs are given to Singaporeans, what kind of job, or the salary. This kind of thing, there should be breakdowns on it. And the government should also provide transparency on how our CPF money is being taken away and then how much they earn from it, and how much they are giving back to the people. And for the money that are not being returned back to the people on the returns of our CPF, what is this money sitting there and what are they doing with it? Because the government keeps saying there's no money. If there's no money, then what is all this money that's sitting there? Where is it sitting and what is it doing? So these are the transparency that we need. Then they need to break down on the type, on the housing condition, how much is being built, how much does it cost to build a HDB flat, and not ask Singaporeans to go and stay in rental flat whereby 9 meters square and 10, 20, 24 people need to share one toilet. Who is going to wash the toilet? Isn't that going to have even more conflict than the current system?
Well, Hanwi, you're like one minister in parliament, no? Always one simple question, not make very long speech. But you see, on this subject, Tean, I think what Hanwi has told us is that since the government is sometimes not transparent in so many things, how do you ensure that you are not making an unfounded allegation, right? Because you don't know what the government is not.
Let's put it this way. You look at the latest debate, which is a big fiasco. They were patting themselves on the back and saying how well they did for COVID. Alright? Yet when the WP says you please produce the full report, they refuse to, right? And what do they produce instead? A so-called white paper. How do you know that that white paper is actually representative of the entire review? And if you want to be transparent, what is the problem in reviewing the full findings of that paper? There's nothing to hide, right? I mean, 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago or a year ago? I was one of the first, in fact the first I think, who said we must have a commission of inquiry. Because, every day our infected people were what? 19,000, 20,000, 20-odd thousand, alright? There was a stage where there were so many, alright? And then, no, they said they were going to have this, I don't know what action review, I don't know what name they dreamt of. And they said they were going to have that review. Okay, have that review. And you mean even after that review, you dare not reveal to Singaporeans what is the full report all about? How are we going to be transparent?
Hanwi, I believe the government response to this issue that Tean just mentioned was that because the white paper is more comprehensive than the internal review report, therefore there's no need to, disclose the...
Well, then I say disclose both. Disclose both. Alright? Then you should be proud of the fact. And if you disclose both, you can tell people, look, my white paper is actually more comprehensive than the review itself. Right? Why have people go away thinking, oh, why can't you review the report? Is there something to hide?
By the way, Hanwi, you were telling me on the way here that you have never gotten COVID before, right?
No, I didn't say that.
No, man. I thought you said every time you test, don't have is negative. Okay, never mind. Since we're talking about COVID, my question to you is this, Hanwi. Do you know in the last 2 weeks, roughly how many COVID cases there are in Singapore?
It's not known because a lot of people got it but they don't report it already.
Okay lah, you don't have to report. But those who report in the last 2 weeks, roughly how many?
I heard that weekly it was over 10,000 cases, right?
You see? That's why, Tean is Tean and you're Hanwi. There are many things that you know that you don't know. Of course, cannot blame you. You got 3 children, 1 year old, 3 year old. Where got time to go and, find out? Okay, you're right, Tean. In the latest, previous 2 weeks, the COVID-19 cases more than 10,000 there. It's going up like crazy there. And do you know that nowadays if you go to the Ministry of Health website, you cannot find the statistics that used to be there anymore. I give you an example. You cannot find how many people have up-to-date vaccination anymore. You cannot find how many people have minimum protection anymore. You cannot find how many people have no minimum protection anymore. By the way, just before they stopped publishing these statistics, the up-to-date vaccination was declining every day almost until it became 49% on the 3rd of February.
I am not surprised. I mean, I tell you this, I am not surprised. Because I have been saying this for the last 6 months, or maybe even longer, and ever since I started this series of videos with Hui Hui, do you remember even in my first video I said, look here, it is only a matter of time before we have a crisis. Because the world is waking up to the fact that these big farmers have not been telling us the truth. Alright? And now there's worldwide litigation, right? Everywhere. You know? Every day I read reports of, oh, people in this country are suing. Even the Japanese are now taking action against, I think, their government. So, you know, this is just the tip of the iceberg, yeah? This is just starting. If you think that the collapse of the small banks in America is serious, I think it's nothing compared to what is going to happen in the coming months and years with regard to the vaccination. And of course, less and less people now are confident of the vaccines. Yeah? And I read in the papers the other day, how much was it that we had like $145 million worth of vaccines that expired or something like that? You know? So, I am not surprised. But I'm telling you, I hope the truth comes out. I am not anti-vax, eh? I had 3 jabs. I got my COVID after the booster shot. Alright? And I have read a lot of things in the papers after that to suggest that with each booster shot, your immunity towards the virus becomes less and less. You know? So I'm concerned. I have received SMSs from MOH to go for another jab. I refuse to. And as far as I know, it is not compulsory. Yeah?
I think there was a latest propaganda. The government say that nowadays for people who are like teenagers or in their 20s, right? If you have 4 to 5 friends around you who die because of heart disease or whatever disease, they just collapse and die, it is actually normal in Singapore now.
Okay. Anyway, you cannot find in the MOH website statistics on what is the breakdown for ICU and deaths into people who are vaccinated or not vaccinated or fully vaccinated or up to date or minimum or no minimum. So nobody knows lah. See, at least in the past, you can tell, right? How many people went to ICU, how many are boosted, how many are vaccinated, how many are unvaccinated. Now all this, like Linton say, is secret lah. And maybe you buy Toto lah.
No.
Why not?
Because it's easier for me to get struck by the AGC than struck by lottery.
Okay, I wouldn't comment on that now.
But can I also say something about the vaccine? You know, when Hui Hui and 5 others brought this judicial review application, we went to court with our data. And you know, we didn't invent the data, right? I mean, we did number crunching, okay? The court did not accept our data. But you know something? Now, I'm starting to read that even from England, there are reports emanating and they are now acknowledging that those who are vaccinated actually become more vulnerable to the virus. So, you know, I think in time to come, even though we may have lost the High Court battle, in time to come, you and the 5 other courageous Singaporeans will be vindicated. There is a long way to run in this story.
And maybe you are the odd man now because you don't buy Toto. Do you know last year the bets was a record high of 9.2 billion? Do you know?
No.
Okay. Do you know that the number of people who excluded themselves, right, because self-exclusion was also the record high for last year?
Like how much?
In the last 4 years, more than 21,000 people applied for their own self-exclusion orders.
So why are there so many people who are being barred from buying?
Not bad, they bar themselves.
Yeah, why?
Lim Tian, why do you think so many people bar themselves from
You
gambling?
see, these people obviously lost a lot through gambling. And you have to go to the root cause of why a person gambles. Yes, sometimes it can be a bad habit which that person fails to break out of. But I think also that very often a person turns to gambling because of his desperate financial situation. I don't know whether I am right in saying that, but I think there is some logic to this argument. And if more and more people are gambling, can I say also that I think one of the reasons is because the financial situation of many people are deteriorating. Would you agree? Yeah?
Actually, not just in lottery, it's also in shares and speculation as well. It was in the newspaper. And not only that, can you imagine if people have this gambling situation, they need to gamble out of the financial situation and they have to tell the government, please just stop me from gambling because I cannot control themselves.
Yes.
Then how bad is the situation is. And not only that, the thing is, if Lee Kuan Yew was still alive, he would not allow casino at all. So who is the one who brought casino into Singapore and allowed people to gamble to this extent? And not only that, HDB also reported that 40% of the people who were supposed to go and choose for their houses in the end back out. So why did they back out? Is it because they lost their job while waiting for the house? Is it because they gamble away their housing deposit and they cannot afford it anymore? Is it because their relationship break down because it was too expensive to die and have a relationship in Singapore? And is it because of all this issue, financial issue, lead to housing issue, and our birth rate went to a historic low of 1.05?
Okay,
Oh,
Lim
I
Tian,
think it is not even 1.05 now. Is it 1.05? Yes, you are right, Hui Hui. It's 1.05 now. You know, it's crazy. Yes.
Han Hui is seldom, if ever, right, but this time. Okay, Lim Tian, my next question to you is about the progressive wage model. Recently, the progressive wage model was extended to admin assistants, right? And now under the PWM for admin assistants, the minimum pay that they must get is something like $1,500. Now, let me give you the statistics. Admin assistants fall under the category of clerical support workers. And of course, most of them you will see are females. So, in the last 21 years, the female clerical support workers' real income only increased by 0.5% per annum for 21 years. Okay, Tian, you have something to
You
say
mean
about
that is 0.5% each per annum?
Yeah.
Let me say this, my friends. One of the great arguments about globalization is this. And you know, before COVID, right, the PAP were waxing lyrical about how wonderful globalization was. And actually, you know something, in the West, after the 2008 financial crisis, the people already knew that a new order was needed. The neoliberal order, which gave rise to so-called globalization, was dead in the waters. Why? Because globalization, neoliberalism, made the rich richer, all right, the poor poorer, the middle class stagnated. Real wages, ever since the West got into this neoliberal model in the late 70s, middle class wages stagnated. It was 40 years of a reckless experiment. Yeah. Started by Reagan and started by Thatcher. I think Lee Kuan Yew jumped on board and Singapore went on a neoliberal train ride. And you know what? The figures that have just been cited, 0.5% for 21 years. That shows you how much real wages have stagnated, haven't they? Yeah? All right? And you know something? You think that over 21 years, your increase in wages I think someone told me the other day when they work out for a cleaner who earns 1,400, you know, the effective increase every year for that cleaner is $8. $8. You think that $8 has been able to cover this cleaner in the last 1 year as a result of this ridiculous inflationary pressures we have had? You know, when GST goes up by 1%, and people were telling the PAP and Lawrence Wong, please don't increase, because it will exacerbate inflation. You know, you and I, who are the end consumers, don't end up paying 1% more, right? Every step of the way, the intermediaries, all right, increase 1%. You know? And so many people have complained, hey, actually at the end of the day, I'm paying 20-30% increase. It's not a 1% increase. I'll give you an example, although this is not a common example, right? I must say. I'm very fond of going to a coffee shop in Telok Kurau to eat a meal, which includes my mee sua soup and all that. 6 months ago, this meal cost me $17. Of course, it's not just mee sua. Mee sua doesn't cost so much. It has meat and other things like that. Then you know what? $17 became $19. $19 became $21. You know, last week when I had the same meal, it cost me $23. Wow. In 6 months, this meal has increased by 35%. All right? And you have to look around you. Suddenly, a 5-room HDB apartment in Ang Mo Kio is renting for $6,500. Yeah? I mean, I think less than 10 years ago, you know, I heard people talk about renting out HDB apartments. It was never more than $2,500, $3,000, right? So, my friends, it is not just BTO prices or resale prices that have become so expensive. And you know, that is the number one complaint of people when we go on our walkabouts. Yes, people complain about the cost of living, but I'm telling you, the first thing they tell us and the first complaint they give to us is the ridiculous price of HDB, whether it is BTO or resale. Yeah? And it not only affects our young Singaporeans who are trying to start a family. And Hui Hui said, you know, our total fertility rate is 1.05. My friends, you need a TFR of at least 2.1 to even just reproduce yourself. Yeah? 1.05 is 50% of that. If you don't do something to arrest it, I'm telling you, in a few decades, Singaporeans are going to be near extinct. All right? I'm going to learn Shanmugam, who said essentially absconded. So I'm going to say near extinct. Okay? But yet the population keeps growing, right? And they keep bringing in foreigners, yeah? They do that. You know? And why? Why is our TFR so low? I mean, Indrani Raja can, you know, talk till the cows come home. The policies will not change. Why? Because we have a government that refuses to clamp down, yeah, on price increases. Don't come and tell me about the free market. There is no free market in the world which does not have regulations. Yeah? For HDB, which is essentially public housing, it is something that the government can well control, but they refuse to. You know? Yes, the higher the HDB prices, I suppose you have to pay more stamp duties, right?
Okay, Hui, why you run away? Never mind. Are you happy, Hui?
No. Actually, there are things, you know, like for example, a lot of people just say, oh, high cost of living, then I need to pay more money. But there are people who actually have to pay their job. That means they actually lose their job because of the high GST. Give example, how it happened. Like for example, I have children. So in my housing estate, there are people who sell probiotics drinks. Okay, which brand? There are a few brands okay, that is selling at my housing estate. Then, if you go to the shopping mall, it has grown to about 50 cent, 30 cent to 50 cent increase. Okay. Then after that, imagine if like you have 3 children or how many children, right? Then this increase, this kind of probiotics drinks to the children is like a luxury. Yeah. So a lot of families decided, okay, I'm going to cut off this kind of probiotics drink, I'm not going to have it. But how are these employees being paid? They are not paid hourly. They are being paid based on commission. So it is fully commission based. You have to sell in order to get your salary. And these people nowadays, they don't sell because people are cutting down on their cost of living. So a lot of them just lose their job overnight. Yeah, just because of the 1% GST increase on the spark of midnight, they lose their job the next day.
You know, can I add something? Since we are talking about the loss of jobs. Yesterday morning, I was in a taxi. I was driven by a very nice Encik who's 69 years old today. Alright? He was previously with a salvage company. He was a seaman with a salvage company. You know, salvage companies are companies that rescue vessels in distress, right? Out at sea. Okay? There are very few of these salvage companies around. And he had a good job. He told me he lost his job to a foreigner. Yeah. After that, he became a technician in a construction company. Again, he lost his job to a foreigner. My friends, you know, I don't think you will find another political party like PV that has been so firm and strong in our position that Singaporeans must have priority for jobs. Alright? Those are good jobs. And I'm telling you, if PV is in government, we will never ever allow a Singaporean to lose a job to a foreigner. An irresponsible government is a government that allows foreigners to come in and take away Singaporean jobs. Yeah? Yeah. So you have this lovely Encik who today is driving a taxi, who I am sure has a lot more talent and can contribute to Singapore far more. Instead, his jobs go to foreigners. Yeah.
Hui Hui, last year, Singapore had record jobs growth in its history. And 88.5% of the record job growth went to foreigners. Are you happy?
So now, because the AGC want me to raise fund on behalf of these people, then I need to prove like, okay, I'm going to get a job, to get installment or whatever. Then I went to work for Singapore because it's part of government and it's the government who kind of politically persecute me. So might as well go and try out the government system. So how it works in Singapore is that once you go to work for Singapore, they will arrange for you to go to different companies for people to find jobs for you. And these kind of people who actually help you to find jobs, what they say is you go to things like street jobs or job street, something like that. So you go there, they ask you to create an account. And what these people do is just tell you to create an account, and they say that when there is jobs, then I would recommend to you. You don't need to waste time to go and apply to these jobs that you always see on this website. Because a lot of the jobs on the website are just put there to show that, hey, look, Singaporeans, the companies are actually looking for people and you are not working in this kind of jobs. Why is it? Because you are finding that the salary is very low. Which is also why nowadays the government is coming up with this minimum $1,500 for admin. But can you imagine the government has to set a law to say that admin are now having $1,500. Before that, they are having less than $1,500. Is it humane or not? And for these people who are already working the entire day, they go back home, they still have to share their rental flat, share their rental bathroom with other people. Is this how the Singapore government is treating the future generation?
I am finding more and more examples, of Singaporeans having to work multiple jobs. All right, I have taken Grab on a number of occasions, and the drivers there tell me they actually have a daytime job, but at night they have to drive. All right, just to earn extra income, and that shows you how crazy our society has become. You know, I mean, I don't care if the PAP are number one in attracting rich foreigners to our country, all right? Attracting rich foreigners to our country doesn't improve your life or my life, okay? I don't believe the nonsense that a rich foreigner in Singapore will create jobs for Singaporeans. Or even if they do, the numbers are very small. Why? You can park your family firm here or your family office. You invest the requisite amount of money to qualify, but capital these days is mobile. Capital can be deployed all over the world. All right? Yeah? And on top of that, despite what Tan Si Ling and previously Josephine Teo may say, all I see are more and more foreign workers coming into the country every year. Yeah? And every day I hear, I am quite a well-known person, right? Wherever I walk, people come up to me and speak to me. And they tell me their woes. And a lot of it is connected with the fact that their jobs were lost to foreigners.
Hui Hui, you have gone through the job search process. You also heard that 88.5% of the record jobs growth last year went to foreigners. So 100 minus 88.5 means 11.5% of the jobs growth went to locals or residents. But locals or residents include PRs. So if we take out the PRs from the 11.5%, how many of the jobs do you think actually went to Singaporeans?
That's why we need transparency and accountability. That's why we need the government to tell us how much goes to Singaporean. And not only that, because of the high cost of living, and I also bring my children to places like polyclinic, then every day you go, first thing is, every time you go polyclinic, every day there will be someone, or maybe a lot of people, going to a financial sector. So now in polyclinic, it's not just like a pharmacy and the doctor area. There is one area of financial counselling, and there are a few officers over there. So there are people like elderly, young families going there because they cannot pay their bills. So there are these kind of families in Singapore. And the situation has also went to an extent, right? There are parents who come to me and say, wow, you got 3 kids. Actually, I also want to have 3 kids, but I cannot have it in Singapore. And we actually went for abortion. So these are Singaporean babies who just die because of government policies. And the government claimed that their 1% didn't do much harm. People lose their job because of the 1%. And people have to abort their baby. 40% of them can't even go for their flat application because of various issues. And not only that, when people are not reproducing, right, 1.05, it includes foreign babies as well. So how many Singaporean babies to Singaporean couples are being born?
You see, I find this figure, a figure like 88.5% of job growth went to foreigners, just simply revolting. How can a government claim to be acting in the best interest of its people when 88.5% of job creations go to foreigners? You tell me. And as you rightfully say, out of the remaining 11.5%, it also includes PRs because, and I find this so disingenuous. Now, locals also include PRs. Why? You can differentiate them, right? At the end of the day, Singaporeans want to know how much every year are jobs created for them. Okay? And what Hui Hui says is right. You go to public health institutions now, and there is one section to do with financial counseling. Why? Because everywhere across the board, the cost of living has gone crazy. You know something? And I have heard this complaint many times. Previously, if you were referred to an expert through a polyclinic, there was a flat rate, right? I think the flat rate was, about $47 or $49 or something like that. I think it was 45 or 47. Now, apparently, this is what I am told, the policy has changed. And now it's no longer a flat rate. but they determine how much you pay based on your household income per capita, as I understand. So there are a lot of complaints. People are suddenly shocked. Hey, why is there no more flat rate? Why am I all of a sudden from $45, $47 having to pay $79, for example? And it is a lot of money to a lot of Singaporeans, right? You know? And so all these things are increasing. And yet the government every day tells us, oh, there's not enough money. We must increase GST because we have an aging population. But when you look at the figures, actually the outflow and the inflow for medical is almost the same. Or in fact, the inflow is more than the outflow. All right? And I believe, I have not updated myself on the figures, there is something like $110 to $120 billion sitting in our Medisave. You know, I am not an expert, all right? I would like to ask my good friend Paul Tambaya what can be done. But I have generally a good sense of what can be done. I'm telling you, with 120 billion sitting in Medisave, I think we can have universal health coverage for every Singaporean. Free health services, you know, and not have all these ridiculous reports every day of elderly Singaporeans going to get medical services and then find that they have to come up with these massive cash outlays. Yeah? So my friends, the short of it is this. We are a society that has gone crazy. You know why? Because we have a government that, frankly, is not interested in helping the citizens to control the cost of living. It is not.
Hui Hui.
Actually, not only that, after you are being referred from the polyclinic to the hospital, there is long waiting time. Then they will tell you, oh, it's very urgent, is it? Then you just go to the A&E, then you'll be admitted in the hospital. But once you go to the A&E immediately, they'll say, oh, sorry, at A&E we don't recognize the polyclinic referral. So you have to pay the private rate, which is even higher. And every time you go to A&E now, you have to immediately on the spot give $145. So if you cannot cough out this $145 administration fee, right, then they will not admit you as well. They will just tell you, okay, you wait first.
Hui Hui, you are affectionately known as the leader of the unvaccinated. How did that come about?
I don't even know. The AGC is the one. 10 years ago, they labeled me leader of the protest. 10 years later, they label me leader of unvaccinated. I don't know, next 10 years, they are going to label me what?
Tean, you mentioned that practically every day or every other day, people come approach you and tell you about the woes. You are also, understand, affectionately known as the most feared leader of an opposition party. Why do you think that you deserve such a accolade?
Because I think, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet, I think I echo what common Singaporeans feel, and I am not afraid to express it. All right? I will say this. I find the quality of debate in Parliament very, very disappointing. Very, very disappointing. I do not want to criticize any party, but I believe that the foremost duty of an opposition is to hold the government of the day to account. There may be a lot of limitations on our opposition, all right? But I think there is a lot more they can do. That they can be a lot more courageous in debating the government, all right? What I hear instead in Parliament very often are long-winded theoretical speeches, even by the opposition. And you must know that that is honestly just a waste of everyone's time. Because as the opposition, you cannot effect change if you have a supermajority like what the PAP has. All right? And what you must do instead is You know something? I will say this. I will say Low Tia Kiang and Chiang Si-tong fell for Lee Kuan Yew's trap, who said that the opposition must be constructive. You can be constructive to a certain extent, only to a certain extent. But bear in mind this, as the opposition, you are powerless to change anything. What the opposition must do is to make sure that unfair, unjust government policies are roundly criticized. And except for one or two opposition members in parliament, I generally do find that the opposition do lack this courage to criticize the government heavily. All right? Maybe everyone is afraid, I will get into trouble. I'll be hauled before the Committee of Privileges. And even outside, they don't dare to do anything. I might be sued for defamation. And it's not helped by the fact that you have people like Shan Mugam, right, who on Wednesday told Parliament, Leong Man Wai, after he had the debate in Parliament, he goes outside and writes an FB post, all right? And he said he felt offended. Why? You mean an MP is not allowed to go outside and write an FB post or write a newspaper article? MPs all over the world do that. Yeah? What's wrong? And I'm telling you, Leong Man Wai's article was in no way defamatory. Not a single bit was it defamatory. I know he has since altered it, alright, removed some sentences. If I was Leong Man Wai, I would not have done a single thing. I would have kept the article as it was.
Unreally, 2 days ago it was all the news. Singapore is the 25th happiest country in the world according to the UN report. I asked you earlier, but you never answered my question. Are you happy?
It's hard to be happy when the government wants to politically persecute you every day. However, if you look at Singaporeans, do you think Singaporeans are happy? It's like there are nowadays, right, as a mother, you go out, a lot of advertisement. These poster mothers for the advertisement, they're foreigners, they're not Singaporeans. And they openly declare some of them are European expats, some of them are China mothers. They are not Singaporean. Can you imagine, like, they are selling baby products in Singapore, diaper, wet wipes, and these people are foreigners, they are not Singaporeans. This is one thing. Then there is another thing, is that this time round our birth rate was at 1.05. Okay, our fertility rate was at 1.05, and the government say that the reason why people are not reproducing is because it's the tiger year and the Chinese are not reproducing. It's like so racist as a Chinese, and with a 5-month-old baby over here, I feel so offended. Like, so you're saying that Chinese cannot give birth during tiger year? What is this reason? So are you telling me that the non-Chinese give birth during the tiger year? Are you trying to tell me that if it's not a tiger year like this year, there will be a lot of people reproducing? No, people are not reproducing because of the high cost of living. So why blame it on the Chinese? Why blame it on the tiger year? And not only that, at the beginning of last year, just 1 year ago, the Prime Minister was the one who came and said, it's the year of the tiger. We will draw all the babies into Singapore. And in the end, they came out with this 8% GST. Who still want to reproduce?
I do know something. Can I add on? Pritam Singh said in Parliament that all foreigners should be given a test, I think, in English, right? So that they attain basic proficiency in English. The PAP disagreed, right? Disagreed. I'm telling you, I agree with Pritam on this point. If you do not do that, all right, very soon you are going to have all these different enclaves in Singapore. Yeah, people who do not know how to speak English, who do not even try to learn the basics. I know of many foreigners from mainland China who today can't speak a word of English. Yeah, in Singapore they can get by because, Mandarin is widely used, okay? But, my friends, there is a danger. And I will never forget a lesson I learned when I was a student in England in the mid-80s. You know who was the Prime Minister of England, of Britain in the mid-80s? It was Margaret Thatcher, right? And she had this problem. In a city just south of Manchester called Bradford, and Bradford is mainly inhabited by people from the Indian subcontinent, South Asians. They started demanding that their schools should be taught in Urdu. Yeah? They wanted to have their own cultural classes. You know what, Margaret? I'll never forget this. Margaret Thatcher stood up at one Conservative Party conference and said, "You have come to my country. You jolly well learn to speak my language. I am not going to cater to you to have our schools teach in Urdu. Alright? You are not going to turn Bradford into some South Asian city." Yeah? I'm telling you, there is a need for some form of a common language. In China, they have 56 different ethnic groups, right? What we call Mandarin in Singapore, Huayi, the Chinese call Putonghua. And what is the literal translation of Putonghua? The common language. Why do they call that? Because the 56 different ethnicities, they all speak different languages. You can be Hokkien, you can be Teochew, Hakka, but what is the common language that binds you together? It is Putonghua. And I think there is a need to do that in Singapore.
Tean, I'm going to ask you the final question. And it's a follow-up question on what you said about what goes on in Parliament, because I think that is very significant. Why do you think no MP has ever asked or is asking in Parliament now why 1.4 million full-time employed resident workers had hardly any increase or negative increase in pay in the last 21 years? When I say negative increase in pay, means every year the pay go down in real terms. When I say hardly any increase, I'm talking about an increase of not more than 0.8% per annum in 21 years. So, I think it's a very significant question. Why do you think no MP has asked?
I do not know why. I will certainly ask it. I think the problem, if you ask me, with most of the MPs is this. And they all have a certain mindset that Singapore has done well. That is the narrative that the PAP has spun, okay? After SG50 and all that, from third world to first, that was the narrative spun by Lee Kuan Yew. And so no one actually dares to challenge that narrative. But actually at the very base of that is a false narrative. When you are telling me that 1.4 million workers have hardly had any increase in their real wages, what does that mean? It means that real wages have stagnated, alright? And why have real wages stagnated? It is because of globalization. Globalization allowed manufacturing to be outsourced, alright? Yeah? Globalization, why do you think Trump won in 2016? Because he connected with Americans and he convinced them that the Chinese were stealing their jobs. Jobs that formerly belonged to Americans were being outsourced to China. It's not just an American phenomenon, alright? It is a worldwide phenomenon in those societies that believe in globalization. I am glad that as a result of COVID, everyone now recognizes that globalization is at an end. Not even the PAP now utters a word about globalization. Have you noticed that? What, you know something? if I am in Parliament, I would be at the heels of the PAP every single day, asking them to justify why a minister can be earning so much when 1.4 million workers, Singapore workers, have not enjoyed any appreciable increase in real wages.
Han Hui, I'm not going to ask you a final question. Because normally whatever I ask you, you also don't answer. You are like the TikTok CEO who was glued in the US Congress for 5 hours. Okay? Never answer the question. So I let you have your last say. Say whatever you want.
I think we will definitely have a follow-up video, and therefore people should stay tuned for the next video. And for the government who is reading this or watching this, please read Annex A, which is the authoritarian rule of law. If you have no time to read that, stop reading people's Facebook. Why are you always on people's Facebook? And so what if you read people's Facebook? It's not as if that you are going to realize that people are saying that they are suffering from the 8% GST, they are suffering from the high cost of living, and you are going to do something about it. No, you are not going to do anything except for making Singaporeans' life harder. And what you should be doing is to tell more truth so that people will read SPH, so that people will stop inflating numbers instead of watching what we are doing right now.
Can I have one last word? Before our next video, can I say this? I think the Keppel fiasco has really just captured the attention of many Singaporeans, alright? We used to pride ourselves on the fact that we were this clean country. You know, in 1989, I will never forget, in 1988-89, when I was training to be a barrister for the Bar of England and Wales, I had to eat all these formal dinners, you know, at my Inns of Court, called the Middle Temple. And one night, a very famous judge by the name of Lord Ackner sat next to me. And he asked me a very pointed question. He said, "Is it true that Singapore is squeaky clean?" Squeaky clean? I was quite taken aback, but you know, it was that era, right? It was Lee Kuan Yew's era. And I said, "Yes, of course we are squeaky clean." And he smiled at me. I'm wondering if today Lord Ackner were to ask me that same question, the late Lord Ackner, he's passed away now, what would my answer be? Yeah? And my friends, I made a TikTok video not too long ago in which I pointed out that the people who have received stern warnings, like Terry Sue, all right? In the stern warnings, it is made explicit that as far as the authorities are concerned, the offense had been made out against them, but a decision was made not to prosecute them in court. So I have asked that question in my video. Were the Keppel 6 given the same stern warning? Alright? Why is it that Indrani Raja told Parliament that there was no evidence, not sufficient evidence to convict them in a court of law? If there is no sufficient evidence to convict in a court of law, the notice shouldn't say that it has been determined that the offense has been made out against you, right? And if you have insufficient evidence to convict someone, I would even say, then you have no right to give that person a stern warning, right? Then you are prejudging. Then you are taking away due process from him, all right? Because under our law, everyone is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty, okay? And Terry Sue's case is not the only case I know of. I recently represented someone very well known. I will not name him. He was given the same stern warning. Of course, the offense was different. All right, the alleged offense was different, but the note was exactly the same. Yeah. So I hope that ties in with what Hui Hui have just said. I think we need to be a lot more alert to what our rights are under the law, all right? And Singaporeans, I think now are waking up to the fact, no. Singaporeans now, I think, many are angry. They do not accept the government's explanation as to why those capital 6 were not prosecuted or were not named. And instead, in Parliament, a PAP backbencher, I don't know why he even did that, alright, out of nowhere asked a question about Lee Hsien Yang and Lee Shepard. Yeah? And then Teo Chee Hean can come up and say, oh, they basically have fled from the country. So, and you know, I won't go into all of what has happened in the last few weeks since the beginning of March. But, you know, I think Singaporeans are telling the government, you don't try and be too clever, okay? At the end of the day, we are not small kids. We know black and white, and you can't turn white into black and black into white, all right? And so let's have some measure of reasonableness, okay? And at the end of the day, in a democratic society, what everyone wants is equality before the law.
Thank you very much for watching the 5th live with Lim Tean and Hui Hui.
Question of the day. If capital is not corrupted, why must we pay the fine? If those people are not convicted, why are they given stern warning if they do nothing wrong? Leave your comments down below. Remember
Leave
to
your
like,
comment
follow,
down
and
below.
share.
If you have some more questions for Hui Hui and Lim Tean, right? Whatever it is, right? Say it, post it, share it. Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Leave your comments down below on what you want to see in the next video. Bye bye.